rest of this beat out. I'ma flatten it. That bobble thump, boom, thump, more than Babylon. That pump thumping, the trigger pulling, repent shooter. That 66 double barrel, that clip loaded. It never needs reloading. It stays loaded with pen proofing. It stays loaded like no sipping that grape juice. Swerving in a boat full of dinosaurs and no traffic. Seeing doubles with more eyes than seraphim. I could tear a limb off your dead body with no grabbing. 9 Romans, the blind chosen for eyes open. Only the elect get an eye poking, no go grabbing. The devil is a lie, anyways, pajamas with feet on him. He feminist, punk, gentlest, coke addict. He got booted for pride issues and world walks in a dress and high heel shoes on him. He poke Catholic. Ain't no dope addicts going to God for the dope. We gospel affiliated, you woke pastors.
Hey, everybody. What's up? Welcome to Grace Covenant Podcast. We are a theological podcast, and we want to focus on theology and Christian growth in the local church. My name is Jeff. I'm the pastor of Covenant Reformed Baptist Church, just a little congregation. We meet in Tullahoma, Tennessee. And I'm here as always with Pastor Happy. What's up, Happy?
What's up, y'all?
How's it going, brother?
It's going pretty good, man. Just got back from Vegas. Was out there with.
I saw some of the pictures. I saw the pictures of you and Dana, and there was I don't know what you would call those sweaters, but they go a little beyond feminine. Just a little.
Yeah. Well, we had our wives made them wear them, and we did get in touch with our feelings, and we were, confiding in each other. The movie
Spider-Man will help you get in touch with your feelings.
Oh yeah. It was GAY. Why? I don't know, but me and Dana just did a couple videos on or reviews on that in the Matrix 4. But yeah, I'm Pastor Happy with Olive Branch Ministries, and tonight we have an awesome guest. I love this guy. This is this is Wayne Cooley from the Basement, Wrath and Grace. And I gotta just say something real fast. This is Wrath and Grace's the Basement with him and Los Morales is by far my favorite podcast, and I love listening to it. It's great content and it's God honoring, and I absolutely love it. And we're so honored and blessed to have you here. So here's Wayne Cooley, guys. We call him Post Malone.
Post Malone.
What's going on, y'all? How y'all doing? Thanks for having me on tonight, man. And don't mind if you see the pretty pictures in the background. And my wife is a makeup artist, and I'm in her studio right now. So that's why you see the these little nice captions behind me. And
oh wow, yeah, a painting of lips.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in my wife's studio tonight, so I'm glad to be with y'all, though, man. This is a great topic to be discussing.
Yeah, whenever Happy brought it to my attention,
we all went blank.
Like I know that it was, yeah. Well, I know that it was something that I wanted to dive into. I didn't know if I wanted to dive into it this quick, but I knew I wanted to dive into it because of mostly for me, it's the issue around. Can you truly be a Christian and then not a Christian? And I know that that's been a theological concept between Christians for a long time, but now we have this movement taking place, and these people who are deconstructing, if you will, truly believe that they were really Christians, but now they profess not to be Christians. And so it's the idea, well, can you truly be a Christian, deconstruct, and not be a Christian?
Yeah. Now this is a very relevant topic, man. You have a lot of people that are leaving the faith, and it's under this premise right here. They're deconstructing their faith, deconstructing the way that they look at life. What they're doing is they're deconstructing the worldview that was given to them. And I definitely want to get into that a little bit more right there. Just that part of it, deconstructing the worldview that they've been given.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, man. If you want to hash that out a little bit, I'd love to hear it.
So
yeah, me too.
We just gonna jump right in.
I
Am I
mean,
good to? I didn't know.
yeah,
I didn't know.
Oh yeah, man.
I'm not jumping ahead, right?
no,
Okay.
No,
I mean,
man.
the topic is so big. I mean, like last week, we kind of joked around a little bit beforehand, but then it was so big, like there was so much more to cover, and we weren't able to do it within our hour. So we figured we'd just jump in it, and we'll just riff off one another.
All right. I'll just jump right in. So I man, trying not to open too many cans of worms tonight.
Open it,
Open them, man. Open them. Let them go all over the place.
So I'll start off.
I'm from the trailer
first thing.
park, so it's real over here, man.
Right. We can talk. We can just lay it out. So you know Abner from the Cross Examine podcast.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah.
Strack. Most people know him as Strack. He was on our podcast way early in the beginning. If we started the podcast a couple years ago, he was like, I think episode 4, we were talking about this topic right here of buzzwords. There's certain words that when you say them, automatically, depending on who you're talking to, something's going to come to mind. So when we hear the word like Christian, like the phrase Christian deconstructionism, I guess depending on who you're talking to, you can get a bunch of different ideas with that one. Sometimes you'll get positive, sometimes you'll get negative views whenever a person will say that phrase right there. Me, I'm kind of in the middle because I hear that term, I always got to follow up with, well, what do you mean by that? When a person says they're deconstructing their faith, I ask, well, what do you mean by that? When a person comes up to me and says, what do you think about Christian deconstructionism? I always ask, what do you mean by that? Because it depends on who you're talking to. Some people, it's they've been fed a really bad theology and they come to grips with that. And they're like, nah, this is not what I've been taught. And there has to be a deeper truth behind all of this stuff. And I'm going to get to the bottom of it. Now, that's a dangerous road to go down. But I would say that all three of us are of the Reformed faith, right?
Yes.
I would say that at one point we had to deconstruct.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I was really ordained in the Assemblies of God.
Well, I wasn't ordained, but I got licensed. So I got certified and licensed, and it got to the point where I was trying to be ordained, and I just couldn't agree with certain tenets of the faith. There's 16 tenets in the Assemblies
16
of God.
fundamentals.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the 16 fundamentals.
I couldn't agree with all 16.
Like there was a time where I did.
Wow.
And,
yeah, because you were ordained. You had to agree with all 16.
Yeah, you had to agree. And well, it was, I was preaching through the book of John. Well, I was preaching at the jail, and I was preaching through Genesis and kind of just going line by line, verse by verse, story by story. Then I was involved with a church plant, and they wanted me to preach through the book of John. And I said, hey, I'm going to do it verse by verse. And by the time I got to John chapter 3, I was no longer in the Assemblies of God. I didn't know what I was. I was like, man, I might be a heretic. I'm not sure. But I just kind of, had to, had to line up what I was taught with, with scripture. I mean, preaching verse by verse. I mean, that's why they don't do it, right? Because I mean, you can't hold to these beliefs that they held to. But I'm sorry for interrupting you, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Side note, I was going to, before I was at the church I'm at now, which we're planning a church. We've been planning a church for the last couple of years. But before that, I was going to a Calvary chapel, and the church was split down the middle. Because Calvary Chapel, they ride hard with verse by verse expositional. Right? They ran into a problem because they were most of these churches are led by one pastor, and then you have the assistant, and down the line. So the head pastor was preaching expositionally, verse by verse, and so was the assistant pastor, but they came to different conclusions.
I can barely hear y'all.
The assistant pastor ended up halfway through the study, ended up sounding reformed and Calvinistic, and they didn't like it, and they tried to shut him down. And the church was split right down the middle, just based off of going verse by verse. So that's a good thing, but it can be dangerous to the wrong church.
Yeah. Yeah, especially if
What's
you're
up,
just
Dana
trying to
Willie?
hoe to certain fundamentals like that.
So my man put Ruslan on there.
Oh
Can't
man.
hardly see you, man. Where you at, brother? You in the dark.
What
Can
up?
you
Hey,
hear us?
Can't
y'all.
hear you.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, now
I
I
can hear
can.
Now.
you. Can you hear?
I know
Can you
I ain't
hear
got
us?
no headphones. Look, I forgot to bring my headphones, and I went out on the town, and I'm all out here like at some mall.
Well,
So I was
jump
like,
on when you get back home.
I can kind of hear you. I can kind of hear a little bit, but it ain't good enough. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to click in. So, hey, what up, man? What up, Cooley?
Yeah. What's going on, bro? How you
My
doing,
man
man?
Rice, my man Haps, what's good?
What's
Good.
up?
Yeah,
Crack
I
a
was just
jack
asking
up.
my wife if she has some headphones. Carry on, y'all. If I can get some headphones, I'll click back in. So,
Uh,
all right.
Yeah, man. Always
no
welcome,
doubt, bro.
brother.
Good seeing you, man. Yeah. So all right. Let me take it back now. So all of us have deconstructed at some point when in the Reformed faith, unless you
Yes.
were like raised in it. But most of the Reformed folk I know weren't raised in it. So and a lot of people in my church, they come from the Pentecostal background. So there has been, if I'm just going off of the definition, because I did see the episode last week. If I'm going off of that definition right there that you gave, which is to, I think Haps was the one who, he used the simple way of saying, how do you construct something you build, right? To when you deconstruct, you're tearing it down. And so if I'm just going off of a simple definition off of that, I'm gonna say that a lot of us have deconstructed to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's popular to deconstruct from Christianity as a whole today, and that's what really needs to be handled, because you're talking about salvation. It's not
Right.
it's not non-essentials. This isn't a secondary or a tertiary issue. This is primary issues when you see people deconstructing from and really it's defecting. It's defecting from the faith.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to chime in for a second. Yeah, there's a healthy deconstruction of whatever your faith is, and then there's a unhealthy one. And I think it really goes down to, like, so uh, I've had a lot of men come through my home, and I've seen a lot of them have bounced around from church to church to church. They've never really been in a church. They've never really been a part of a church. And for some of them, they started deconstructing their faith because one pastor says one thing, another pastor says another, and they're just going around in circles. They just really they separate themselves from doctrine, and sitting under leadership and having accountability and all this kind of stuff. And so, whenever they come into a church that does uh, uh, hold to a set of doctrinal beliefs, where it's a church proper, where we partake of the Lord's Supper, and there's accountability and there's growth, they tend to retract, and then they go into the scriptures themselves. And then we got Marcus Rogers. We got people like that. All right. That come up with their, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this live right here?
Yeah, this is
Yes.
live.
Okay, because Los a couple minutes ago said that it wasn't live.
No, it's
No,
live.
it's live. It's live
Okay.
on 3
Tell them,
different platforms.
Okay.
yeah,
right
tell
now.
them
All
to
right.
go
Got
to
you.
my
Got you.
page.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
It's
So
live
we
on my
have a
page.
YouTube channel, we have a Facebook page, and then it's live on my personal Facebook. I got people talking on my personal Facebook.
But
Okay.
yeah,
Got
so
you.
here's the thing is that again, like I was saying, so and then people other people deconstruct it. This is the point really I wanted to really bring up tonight, is when people detach themselves from sound doctrine, they make up their own doctrine and their own idea of what church is. All right. And so it's really a deconstruction of not only the Christian faith, but the church in general, I think. And that's what I see that all over the place. It's a really deconstruction of the church. And that seed was really planted in the because of postmodern deconstruction, back in the 1830s. And we're seeing the fruits of that here in the United States now. It ramped up in the 60s, and now it's really because of the whole information age, because of the internet and everything. You have tons of doctrines all over the place, and people just don't know what to believe anymore because they're biblically illiterate.
Yeah, and I don't think now when I say church here, I'm speaking of Christians broad. I don't think we've done a real good job of articulating what we mean by the message of the gospel over. Now I'm not talking about us individuals, you and I, and those who do try to articulate the gospel and what it is that we mean when we say Christian. Like a lot of times, whenever I'm witnessing or debating somebody, I basically ask for a chance. I say, like someone says, "Well, I know what a Christian is," and I said, "Well, give me a chance to tell you what I believe as a Christian." And I don't think the church has done a real good job of telling the world what it is that we truly believe as a Christian. What it is that that through that God created the world through His Son Jesus, and ever since the fall of man, He has been recreating the world through this message about Jesus. And I think it's really that central message of Christianity that people are trying to deconstruct from. So I've been watching a lot of videos, and a lot of it has to do with, well, I was told that, basically God had a wonderful plan for my life, um, that He loved me, that I was His child, that everyone was His child. But then I look around the world and evil is present. I read the Bible, there's genocide, God commanding the killing of the whole nations, man, women, children, cattle. And so it's hard for them to reconcile what their church is teaching them and what they see taking place in the world and what they read in the scriptures, because it hasn't been articulated well. Why was this genocide uh, given? Uh, why is there suffering? You know, uh, they don't understand the depth of sin. One sin,
Yeah.
as little as eating of a fruit, one bite of a fruit. This one bite that took place in a fruit affected the world so much. It's like throwing a rock into a pond. The way that rock causes the pond to ripple, that one bite ripples the whole creation. This one sin. That's how holy God is. That they don't understand their own depravity and why it is that we don't deserve God's mercy. And so the church has not been doing a real good. Again, I'm not speaking of every individual person, because I know there's good congregations. I know that there's people out there preaching the word, but the church as a whole, I believe TBN has made more. TBN, Trinity
Oh
Broadcast
my
Network,
gosh.
has made more atheists than secular colleges.
The blasphemy network.
What's being portrayed as Christianity in our world today, and I think that again.
Well,
Post Malone, you're a post mill, correct?
Who, me?
Yeah. Are you post mill?
I'm still in progress with my
Yeah.
eschatology.
Yeah.
That name Post Malone has come along the way just because I do consider myself partial preterist, but I mean, if we really want to get into that topic, most Christians are partial preterists, but that's another argument.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been struggling with the term myself here lately. Like if you ask my wife, like I told her the other day, I'm not sure what I can call myself. I know I can call myself a optimistic partial preterist. Like I know that for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm an
But I
optimistic
do believe
Christian,
that the
not a
victory of
pessimistic one.
Jesus, that the victory of Jesus, um, what Jesus done on the cross is victorious, and it's going to spread. And so,
It
but it's this
has.
idea that so it's this idea that I know, like I truly have a hope that this is only going to be for a season.
Mm-hmm.
That this
Yeah.
too, this deconstructing season will one day be put under the feet of Christ. But it's not
Yeah.
until the church gets its act together. And I mean, like
Well,
the
can
church
I?
abroad. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you know, Scripture says that the world will know us for the love we have for one another,
Mhm.
and they're seeing just that. We don't love each other, and those within the church, they, especially new converts. We got new converts in there that they're going through their deconstructionism of whatever, and but and they're gentle and they're fragile. And this is when we should be pouring the most into them, because it's so easy for somebody that's a new convert that's has just come to the Lord, and they're not being discipled. They're just becoming church attendees. And so and I have seen that with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of men I've had come through my home. None of them have been discipled. They've all been to church. They've all, just so many different types of stories and stuff. But, um, you know, uh, uh, we threw out doctrine back in the 1800s, man, and we we went someplace else, and that has flourished into a whole in all Christendom, a questioning of God's word, all these different factions are at play and stuff. But I really feel that when how is it that what's his name, Charles Spurgeon once said, he goes, the time is coming when clowns will be entertaining goats in church,
Hmm.
you know and we're going through one of those moments. I mean, one of those times in our chapter of church history. We're just another chapter in church history. But what are we going to do with it? Because a lot of people are deconstructing in a not a positive way. They're deconstructing from the faith because they don't know the gospel. They, in 34
We
churches
lost you
out
there
here in
for a
Southern
second,
California,
brother.
and I'd pull off 5. What?
I said we
Right
lost you
here?
there for a second.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you back. You just froze up for a second and start stuttering.
I thought he was just
I was doing the
processing his
robot.
thoughts.
Yeah, I was in deep thoughts with Jack Andy. So
He started to transcend. That's what happened.
Yeah.
oh yeah, I was transcending. Yeah,
You
but
know
no,
what
no,
I
no.
like? I like
Go ahead, man.
cut you off. I was commenting on what you were saying, and we can get right back to it. But I like what Douglas Wilson said. I heard him speaking on eschatology recently, and just really it was bigger than eschatology. It was dealing with where the church is at right now. And he has a phrase. I'm sure it's his, but I'm gonna just keep on borrowing it. He says, "What if we're still in the beginning of church history?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I believe.
What if? What
Mm.
if? What if this is still early church history? we always have this idea of like early church history being the first, second, third century AD. But what if this is still early church history? And years from now, people will be looking back and saying, hey, do you remember in early church history when the Christians were dealing with, when the church was dealing with Christian deconstructionism? Like, like the same way we look back and say, you remember how the early Christians were dealing with Gnosticism?
Yeah. That's what I totally feel right there, man. I totally feel, you know, because you got a lot of people nowadays that, especially Hebrew roots. I don't know if you've ever had to deal with Hebrew roots, but a lot of Hebrew roots, Seventh-day Adventists and stuff like that. They always go, we got to go back to the way that the church first started. And I always tell them, I go, back at its infancy, you know, a child grows up over time, you know, and we're going to be the bride of Christ. You know
what I always say when they tell me that? I say, well, have you come to our church? Because I mean, because the church talks about the gathering of the assembly, and it says that when they gather, Acts 2:42, they gathered together for the teachings of the apostles, to break bread, fellowship, and prayer. Well, that's what we do at my church.
Yeah.
And we speak to one another in psalm, hymn, spiritual songs, sing, and make melody in our heart. I mean, that's what they were doing, and that's what we do at our church.
Amen. Amen. On a lighter note, when people say that, because I was guilty of that for so many years, I've stopped saying that right there, where like, we just need to go back to the early church. I've stopped saying that because when you look at the early church, look at some of the things that were happening.
Yeah.
Like Paul was literally getting on a young man who was having sex with his father's wife in the church, and the church was tolerating it. They still allowed them to be in the church when that was happening.
Yeah, I spoke on that this past week.
I just spoke on that this morning, dude. You know, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have this tendency to make a myth out of everything. Even like, let me give a modern day example. Like today, you have so many adults like myself, because I have 3 teenagers. So I always, I'm guilty of this too. Like, I'll be like, man, today is nothing like my day back in my day. And I have this tendency to, make my day seem like it was so righteous. But when you go back to my day was just as lost as this generation is.
Absolutely.
And society today is just as lost as it was in first century AD when the church was exploding.
Okay, am I there, guys?
I see you modeling.
You're voguing right now.
Okay.
Was I voguing? Was I doing that?
Oh yeah. Well, have you ever seen that?
That's how I roll, man.
It's a movie with a rock in it, where like those Jumanji, and he was they called it smoldering.
Yeah.
You were smoldering.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, you're good now, but yeah, you were frozen a little bit.
Yeah, it's probably because of my charismatic, personality. Just kind of like shakes things up.
That's what you were quaking. That's what it was.
I was quaking. Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead. We do have a tendency to just say things like that right there, where it's like, oh man, we just need to go back to the early church. And it's like, wait a minute, like Jeff said, like, there's maturity, there's goodness in where we are today as the church. It's not just something where we're constantly looking back, but we need to look forward and look around and see that the gospel really is advancing. The kingdom is advancing. The gospel is being proclaimed in all the nations. And Paul said it himself, the gospel has been proclaimed in all of the nations, if Paul can say that, how much more can we say that?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's good.
I like how Paul, when he's addressing the Roman, I think it was Romans. He says that your faith is being proclaimed everywhere,
in all the nations,
and it's just like we see, like, so many people think church is like this really really big thing. I see the power of God working through the little churches more than anything I've ever seen. I've been all over the country, seeing all these little churches doing big things for the kingdom of God, and giving God all the glory. And I just wish a lot of these people here in Southern California can see that.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So what would y'all say about what kind of answers could we give? Let's say there's someone watching and they're deconstructing, not just from having a paradigm shift of being a part of the Pentecostals to Reformed, or maybe even Reformed to the Pentecostals, of having some kind of a, I know I can probably get some stones thrown at me in some areas, but it, but actually to where they're saying, I was a Christian, maybe they were in a rock band, or maybe they grew up in the church, whatever it looks like, but now they don't believe, they're not following Jesus, but they truly believe that they were Christian. Like, what kind of answers, as mature men in the faith? I know I'm a pastor. I know Haps runs that man's group. He pastors a group of men. I'm not sure what your ministry is, but you seem very, very mature in the faith. What are some pastoral answers that we could give to someone that might be listening, that's deconstructing, that believed themselves to be a Christian, but now they no longer believe?
Well, I know that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Wayne.
Go ahead, Haps. Go ahead.
Well, I know what, just from experience, but I ask everybody that comes into my program. I ask everybody that comes into my program. I say, so are you a follower of Jesus Christ? And they go, oh yeah, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Yeah, I've been going to church my whole life, or they're going through deconstruction. And I always ask them this: so what's the gospel? And then none of them can tell me the gospel. So that just shows me right there they were never a Christian to begin with. It's I mean, just plain and simple, and since they don't know the gospel, now my arm is behind me. Now they're twisting my arm behind my back. Now I got to tell them, I got to break it down, so I give them the gospel of Jesus Christ, and I just be gentle and kind with them, and I let the Holy Spirit do the rest.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I've been learning to do over the years is to listen. It's kind of like dancing or martial arts or anything like that. You read the situation, and sometimes it's much better, much wiser to react and respond after you hear a person out. That's why I said, my number one question is, what do you mean? When a person says things like, deconstructing, stuff like, well, what do you mean by that? What is it that you're deconstructing? What has caused you to get to this point? You want to hear their heart. And as you're listening to their words, you want to be listening to their heart at the same time, and praying that God, literally, as you're sitting in silence, as you're listening, it's an active silence where you're praying to the Lord. Lord,
yes,
reveal to me what it is that you want me to say. What should I not say? What do I need to pay attention to? What is something that maybe I don't need to dig in right now, but later on I can come back to them? Can you open up opportunities for me to, talk to this person again? I mean, it's just so many things that people miss because they feel like they have to say the right thing right there in the same moment. And
bring it. Yeah, that's it.
I mean, many of us, because we live in a microwave culture. So before we walk before we walk away from that person, we have to feel like we got to get them saved. And that's doing nothing but going right back to our charismatic roots. Many of us get them saved right in that moment. It's almost like when we're evangelizing to somebody, we're looking for an altar call in our evangelism. I need you to come to the faith right now. And I need you to proclaim Jesus right now. And you're going to hear me out right now. You're going to accept this truth right now. And we don't understand that it was a process for us.
Yeah. I know that I've struggled with this, being,
Amen.
I do a lot of street preaching and a lot of street evangelism. And sometimes I feel like I got someone's, like in a one-on-one, like sometimes I feel like I got someone's attention for 3 minutes. Like all I got is 3 minutes, So I do my best to do what Revelation speaks about, the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony, And so I try to speak truth about the gospel, the blood of the Lamb, and then what this message has done for me and to me, my testimony. And that's how I really try to focus. And there's been very few times where I've bumped into someone that was deconstructing, but it has happened. And in those moments, I can't say that I was always pastorally with them, as I would now, looking back as a pastor, I wished I would have been. I think ever since becoming a pastor of the congregation that I'm a part of, I've been really slow to speak, and just trying to figure it out now. I know there's things that I've said in the past that I would kick myself if I said again, and not saying that what I said was wrong, but it was too soon. It was too forceful. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm trying to figure out, because I'm not saying that I have the answers. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to approach this, because it is a sensitive subject. These human beings, these souls who grew up in Christianity, believe themselves to be Christians, but they have walked away from the church. And for the most part, it's because of the message they were taught. They wouldn't. They might have heard about the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, but they're not sure why he died, why he was buried, and the purpose of his resurrection. Like, you can hear the death, burial, and resurrection all day long, but to actually understand the meat of why this happened, well, that's a different story. And so they wasn't properly taught the gospel. And so personally, here lately, I think I'm just going to, for right now, until I can I can figure something else better. Personally, I'm just going to stick with the blood of the Lamb, present to them the biblical gospel, not only death, burial, and resurrection, but why the death, why the burial, why the resurrection, what and the word of my testimony, what this has done to me and for me.
I don't
know how all that plays out. No, go ahead, please.
I had this kid in my program, and the kid was in and out of foster homes. I love this kid. His name was Z. Absolutely love this kid, man. I was going to adopt him, and just absolutely loved him. He was so sexually traumatized as a kid. He developed multiple personality disorder. It happens with a lot of children that are gang raped or seriously traumatized when they're children. And he started deconstructing the faith. And I was just sitting there. I'm like, why are you questioning? I'm like, and something you said, Wayne, that really hit home right there. Some of the best evangelism I've ever done, I just listened. I just listened, because I'm not trying to be heard internally. I get kind of emotional when I talk about this, because I don't want to see anybody perish. I don't want to see anybody perish or go through this internal struggle or trauma or whatever it is. We can work this out. We can reason together. We can take this to God and reason with him, whatever it is, and so I want to hear them out. And this kid was really lied to so many times by different pastors and stuff, and men in his life would always let him down and stuff. And I after I heard him talk, I was like, listen, man, this is what you need to understand. Man will always let you down. All right. But Christ will never let you down. All right. Our faith is in him, not a man, not a preacher. It's in Christ. All right. And he was really struck. He said, well, all men are liars. And I go, look at, man, I one day I'm going to let you down. I'm asking that you please show me some grace. And I know one day you're going to let me down, and I'm going to show you some grace. You know, I think that's what a lot of these people in the church, they haven't been shown grace. They haven't been shown mercy. They've been given a workspace salvation gospel. You know, that's a workspace. I can't confess my sins to everybody, but yet they're all hypocrites. You know, there's so many different facets to this and stuff, but it was heartbreaking to see him deconstruct, and now he just completely gave up on Christianity, and you know, he's in God's hands. I believe God will bring him back. I really, really do. You know, I totally do. He's only 19 years old and stuff, but it was heartbreaking to go through, you know. But yeah, that's, and I've gone through, I've had many young men here that were sexually traumatized as kids, and they just
going to
don't.
try to come back in, yo.
Did I?
Let Dana.
Oh, Dana.
Yeah. You got headphones?
Of course
I got
not.
headphones, but I still can't. I don't know if this adapter's working.
Hey, get up on a stool. We can't see you. Put some telephone books underneath you. Get up on your wife's shoulders.
Oh, now I hear it.
Did you hear that, Cracker?
I'll get on your shoulder. I'll get up with Spider-Man costumes on.
With the Spider-Man costume on.
I still think that would be more manly than if you got on his shoulders with those sweaters on.
Oh man, those
you jealous? You know you wanted to wear
just
one
a little bit. No,
we after we saw Spider-Man, we contacted Jeff and we're like, Jeff, don't go see Spider-Man. It was gay. And he goes, I bet your sweaters liked them. Like the movie. We laughed so hard.
Did your sweaters enjoy them?
Did your sweaters enjoy the gay movie?
Hey, yeah, it was a sensitive movie. Just that part, anyways. Hey, whatever.
So Dana, we're back talking about the Christian deconstruction movement.
I'll be right back.
Kind of drifting off of one another.
I thought y'all were gonna be chopping it up about hip hop or something.
Oh no! Hey, but I did get a testimony this past week. A lady texted me, and she said that she listened to the podcast and that you said something that resonated with her. And it was whenever I asked you the question about how come, us being guys from the street, trailer parks, projects, knowing calamity, coming to, gang violence, coming to Christianity, and still experiencing calamity. How is it that we haven't, come to a deconstruction movement in our own self? And you said Jesus, and that your whole that the wrath of God that Jesus bore, and that your whole that the life you live, the calamity that you live, is what makes you who you are. And then you spoke about Esau, like God hating Esau but loving Jacob, but Esau got all he wanted, and he beat the crap out of Jacob.
That's what it is.
And man, when you said that, I just want you to know that it really resonated with this woman, and so she reached out to me, man. I just want to share that with you.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah, man, it's the truth.
So I did answer the question about how I would respond to somebody that is in that process of, they into that Christian deconstructionism. So when this topic first came up, what came to mind was something that I've been dealing with the last, 5-6 years, which is the Black Exodus. You guys know about the Black Exodus?
Yeah, I do not know.
I don't.
I don't know. The Black Church Exodus, I should say. Yeah. So you have a lot of black people, Christians, that are leaving the church because something that they came across that made them realize, oh man, I don't know if I'm actually a Christian. I don't know if I believe this stuff. A lot of them were raised in the church and they pretty much gave up their Christian faith, or they found something out, went deeper, and they hold to the Christian faith, but they also hold to other things as well. So you see people leaving the church because of that. You see people leaving the church because maybe they're going to a church that hasn't dealt with some of the social justice issues the way that they like them to deal with them. I mean, it's a list of reasons, but I've been dealing with the Black church exodus for a couple years now, trying to help people that are close to me not defect from the faith, not fall from the faith because of their struggles with the church, or struggles with Christianity, or even the Christianity's like people who have professed to be Christians throughout history, specifically with the slavery that happened here in America. You have a lot of white people that were claiming to be Christians while doing it, and when certain certain black Christians find out about this, they look at Christianity and go, how could God allow this? Right. Anyway, I bring all of that up because I that is a certain version of it, or a form of it, with Christian deconstructionism, when you see black people leaving the church for that reason.
Hey, you know what? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, I have dealt a lot with that that young man I was telling you about, and all but I think 3 of them that were deconstructing, they were all black.
Yeah,
and
so
they said I followed a white Jesus and all this kind of stuff. And
yep, exactly. And so that when you start to tear down, this is right back to where we were full circle, talking about what we were talking about at the beginning of this podcast, and even what y'all were dealing with last podcast, which was bad theology. When you're dealing with all of that bad theology, or even just holding to things that are not true, a white Jesus, holding to doctrines like Ham's descendants are the black people, and that's why they were enslaved all those years. When you're dealing with oh, you got to wear the 3-piece suit to church, or else you're not a Christian, or you can't have tattoos when you're dealing with a lot of that stuff is fundamentalism. But
absolutely.
When you're dealing with that, when you're breaking that down as a black person today in 21st century America, it can be dangerous with anything. When you're tearing down strongholds, when you're letting go of false doctrines, that's a dangerous place to be. And that's why it's good to be there with a person and hear them out, so that you can walk alongside them and guide them in the right direction.
Amen
on
man.
That. So I didn't know what that was called, but a majority of the videos that I've been watching were of the black community leaving the church, but I didn't know it was like there was a name for it. I didn't know it was called the Black Exodus.
Black church exodus.
No,
black Christian exodus. Whatever.
Black people will leave a church because of white people. You see what I'm saying? Why is there black churches and white churches? Why we even call it that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So here goes
people
something.
will leave a white church just because of white people in general, because white people act stupid with theology and all that. I see a lot of the Pentecostal movement, and I see a lot of black people in the Pentecostal oneness movement. I don't understand it why, but it's almost like the racists, like white people are grabbing to this wokeness kind of thing, and I'm not saying all, of course, and then I see a lot of black people grabbing to the Pentecostal movement, and I don't understand that whole like divide of like why even call it a black church? Like that's where I was. I used to be
here's a couple
church,
things.
You know what I'm saying?
History wise, right? How does the black church come to be the black church? Well, it's because the white people wouldn't accept black Christians. So even whenever black people were accepted in churches, they would have to go in the top balcony they wouldn't be accepted in the main section. They would have to go to certain areas, right?
Yeah.
So the black people, because they weren't accepted in white churches, they had to start having their own churches. So that's how these black churches were formed historically.
Right.
Now, it stayed like that over the years because distrust that black people had in white people.
Yeah.
It stayed like that because of tradition and culture as well, too.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see these historically black churches die out. We're starting
Right.
to see more and more of that, because people, one, well, I mean, just in general, America, everybody's mixed now. So there's not
Yeah.
pure black people as much as there were before. Just like redheads are dying out,
Yeah.
pure black
Y-
people are dying out, pure white people. And I use
No,
that
you're right.
loosely. I
Yeah,
use that
absolutely.
loosely,
You're
but
right.
you
Yeah,
guys know what I'm
absolutely.
saying. Like everybody's
Absolutely.
mixing, everything's mixing. Like you
Yeah.
can't. How can you have an all black church whenever everybody is mixing races? And I feel
Well,
like this is a good thing.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
you know what I love about it is that's the promise of Christ right there, where all nations are gonna all all tribes, languages, nations are gonna flow up to him. And what I came from, I was a skinhead, you know that, and
Mhm.
I just don't see it anymore. I see sheeps and goats. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't I just don't see it. And so when I'm confronted with that type of mentality, I'm just like, what about forgiveness? What about forgiving? Like the forgiveness is supernatural. It's not normal. All right.
Yeah.
It's not normal for us to forgive. The world, look at, and this is it. Is in a lot of the churches, we don't show for forgiveness.
Yeah.
We don't show these things. We're
We don't
not
offer it.
being,
We don't offer it, show it, or accept it.
yeah. I'm
Like
too afraid
I can
to
remember
share my sins with my brother, because they might, it's this whole fear of man, and what a man going to say, and all this type of stuff, and it's just like, real true koinonia, real fellowship is the biblical fellowship, and that's where we can all, doesn't matter what race. If I grew up on Compton Boulevard, it doesn't look like it. I'm from LA, it doesn't look like it. But
Yeah.
that doesn't matter anymore, because we're the kingdom of God now.
yes.
And that's the whole point. We're followers of Jesus Christ, not followers of social justice, all this nonsense, critical race theory, all this type of stuff is not biblical.
So
All right.
let me add something to this now, because I want to kind of comment on what Seipel was talking about.
Disciple.
And so historically, you have these black churches, right? Because they were not accepted in white churches.
Yeah.
Now, and Jeff could attest to this too, because he was ordained in the Assemblies of God. If you look at the history of the charismatic movement, the Pentecostal movement, the Azusa Street revival, you'll see it makes perfect sense why black people attract to Pentecostalism.
Yeah.
When you know the roots behind it.
Right.
Even when you look at the fact that, Church of God and the Assemblies of God split up at one point over their issues on race.
Yep.
Black people were
Yeah.
accepted in the Assemblies of God at one point. Then they started to split off at some point, and that's where you started to see the Church of God denomination, because black people were looking to get affirmed and ordained, and they can
Right.
only really do it in a few different spaces in society. Historically black churches and the Assemblies of God at one point, which ended up splitting over racial issues. So you see, if we're historically been in these denominations because we've been accepted in those places. Same thing with Martin Luther King. Like if Martin Luther King would have been accepted into the Reformed seminary, he might not have been so liberal.
Yeah.
Because only the liberal universities and seminary would accept him, well, now that's a mark on the Reformed Church now. They could have, because he applied to go to a Reformed seminary at first, but he was not accepted.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's a real good point. I did not know that. Yeah.
So, all right, so I'm gonna bring it back. I promise I'm gonna bring it back full circle.
Well,
I'm
keep
bringing
running,
all of this
brother.
stuff.
Bring
I'm
it,
bringing
bring
all
it.
of this stuff for a reason.
you're
So
talking about history, and with the history that you're talking about comes so many more things into it. You know, I get into it, or I used to get into it with a lot of Hebrew Israelites, right? And it's just so much, you know, like twisted theology into, you know, we're the real, you know, we're the real Jews and we're the real that. And it's almost like these sub cults that come out of, you know, um, out of all that history of, like, even going back to, like, saying that, you know, I'd get in arguments with people like friends of mine, and they'd be like, yeah, white Christianity was forced on black people and back in slavery times, and, you know, they'll get into history stuff like that, you know. And that's when you know, white people were twisting the crap out of, like, the Bible with the slavery verse, you know what I'm
right,
saying? Like, so
yeah,
even history like that. And who wants to be a black man walking into, you know, a church where there's white Jesus pictures all over the place, and white Jesus on a cross and all that, and there's white people that are treating them differently, and all that? There's so many elements to the historical way of, like, what you're saying. There's so
Hey,
right,
many little things, and it drives theology just a little bit to the left and then to the right, and now there's subcults like Israelites, and actually it was a slave ship that took us over to, you know, and all the to Egypt and all this stuff, and it's just all crazy. You know what I'm saying?
but everybody talking about those things that, like, it's for a reason. That's why, you know, we should listen to them.
yeah.
So, like, all right. So historically, because this is where we come from, those faces right there, with the historically black churches, the Pentecostal movement. This is where we're coming from. We were not struggling to believe, and I'm speaking in general terms right now. Black churches, black Christians were not struggling to believe that the Bible was inerrant,
Yeah.
or it was not inspired by God. These were not the things that we were struggling with. We were struggling with finding identity and affirmation in the culture. We were dealing with, how does the gospel relate to a black man being made in the image of God, which is what they were battling against, right?
That makes sense. That makes
The
sense.
white church at the same time, and I encourage you guys to get this book by Steve Nichols and oh man, what's the name? It's dealing with the inspiration, the inerrancy of the scriptures, and I'll have to. It's called Ancient Changing World, something like
How
that.
about you find it, send me the link, and we'll put a link on each one of
I'll find
Yeah,
it.
these things
yeah,
for people that listen and they
yeah.
can get it too.
Just look it up, Stephen Nichols, Ancient World, something like that. So anyway, and I'll get that to you if Haps can't find it. As the black church was dealing with all of these issues right here, the white church was arguing over, well, the Bible is not inerrant. The Bible is not inspired. That's what you guys were talking about at the beginning of the podcast, the
That's
1800s.
that's
You had
crazy.
all these people defecting from the faith in the white church. The black people weren't doubting whether the Bible was from God and whether it was, whether it had flaws in it. We weren't arguing about that. We were
That's
dealing with
dope.
much bigger issues. So now we're dealing with that though today. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we've fallen back from our orthodox ways. We've fallen back from a lot of the things that were good traditionally for black people in the church. And when you fall back from those things, you end up accepting and embracing liberal theology. Now you
Yeah.
have black people questioning the word and the inspiration of the scriptures, and it's no wonder why they're deconstructing their Christian faith.
Yeah.
That's a good point, man.
I feel you on that, man. I didn't know that.
Hey, you know
Yeah, I
what?
didn't either, man. That was good.
You know
I
what?
definitely want to read that book.
Hey, you see this picture behind me? That's
Yep.
a Chinese Jesus right there.
Oh yeah.
Is it?
Hey, let me tell you a funny story. So I was roofing this church. You know, it was a black church, and so the way that the sanctuary was, I roofed houses for 25 years. So the way that the sanctuary was, it was cathedral, and in the wood. So like the decking of the wood had large gaps in it, and as we was tearing off the shingles, some of the trash fell into the sanctuary. And so I went inside, and I was probably real young into my Christianity. Uh, I went
Hey, thanks,
inside to
man.
clean up the
Appreciate it.
mess, and there was a picture of the Lord's Supper, and it was all black folks. And I was just like, what? Like I was taken back. You know, I was like, why are they black? And then I went to my church at the time, and we didn't have any pictures of Jesus except for in one room. And I never came across this room until probably a week after I saw the black Jesus. And I walked into this room and I saw, well, I passed by the room and I saw a picture of a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes looking
Yeah,
up in the sky. And it kind of
yeah,
stopped me in my route. And I turned back around. I walked in there and it was white Jesus.
Mm.
And I was like, what? Like, like it was just, I felt the same emotions because I know that Jesus was a Middle Eastern man.
right.
But
Now,
you know what?
as a Reformed guy, we don't have pictures of Jesus in my house, anyways. But I
Look,
mean,
look,
I don't know where
so
y'all stand on the 2CV thing, but I was, uh, but I found myself like in that when I was in that black church, thinking, why do they think he's black? But then when I walked into my white church, thinking, why do we think he's white?
hey,
Yeah,
you know what?
I
I got a
had the
huge.
same feeling,
I,
like the same emotions was in both when I saw the black Jesus and then when I saw the white Jesus.
Mm,
I got a
And,
huge depiction of Jesus of a depiction of who Jesus could have been on my back, or who
yeah,
he
it covers
is.
his whole back. His whole back is
I'm covered in
Jesus.
in art, but it's art, man. It's just a representation of, you
yeah,
know, it's not really what he looks like, and that's just
yeah.
how I would run it if somebody wants to come at me with the, second or the breaker or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
You know what?
That's how I
Oh
look
yeah.
at
You're
it.
talking about the 2CV thing. Like personally, like with the tattoo, I don't see anything wrong with it. But because I can remember going to my uncle's church when I was a kid, and they had a picture of Jesus, but it was a white Jesus with brown hair,
Right. I
and then
mean,
and it had a brown hair and brown beard. And there was this white guy that walked into the sanctuary. He had a brown beard and brown hair, and he looked just like the man on the picture. And I thought Jesus came to church.
We lost Wayne.
I just need to I just need to tan my back,
No, I'm
Hey,
still
and
here.
then
I'm still here. I had
it
to go
looks
get
more
something.
like him.
hey,
Yeah,
you know what?
yeah.
So let me just say something real fast. So I found the book. It's called Ancient Word Changing Worlds
Yeah, that's it.
by Steve Nichols. It's on Amazon.
Yeah, if you
And
could
it's
send a link to the platforms that
yeah, I
we're
will.
on, it'd be
It's
great.
the doctrine of Scripture. But you know, like as I was pointing out this picture right up here, this is of the Gao tribe in China that doesn't have a written language. And some of the most beautiful art I've ever seen was depictions of the Chinese Jesus or the Indian Jesus or the you know what I'm saying? Like every culture sees Jesus through their eyes, you know, and
Right.
how they see them. And
Well,
I think that's beautiful, actually. You know, I think
Well,
that's
every
what
culture
the comic?
sees the Bible through their lens too. When
Yeah.
yeah,
when you look at the stories of Noah and you look in Asia and they have stories of Noah,
yeah.
Noah looks Chinese.
Yeah.
He does, huh?
Like that's just how it is. We just always view. Why do you think all of the Avengers, is for the most part, most superhero movies have American superheroes or they're speaking English? Like we always have a bent of putting things in a way that we can understand it in the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I would say at the heart, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right,
perhaps
right.
Yeah.
that picture behind you. I was thinking about that 2CV thing, and that picture behind you has a story behind it where, you know, when I went to your wife's dad's house,
Oh yeah.
and it's like, you know, you ain't supposed to depict graven images. Well, that's how they taught
Yeah.
the
But they didn't have a
gospel
written language.
through pictures of
Yeah.
of the stories. And how do you run that as being wrong when you're
It's not.
teaching it through pictures, right? So there's a hard like turn on that one. You know what I'm saying? Like, because I started thinking about that, and I'm like, you have a huge depiction behind you, but it's for a purpose of preaching the gospel through pictures, and
Yeah, they're called story cloths.
and that's beautiful. And I've
Yeah.
never heard of it until your dad and you guys told me about it. And there was what was it? Korean Jesus, Chinese Jesus.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it's just the
My
way it
wife,
is. I mean,
my wife and her dad were missionaries to China, Korea, India, and I'm the real ones. Like, hey, it's time to pack our coffins and go. That type of thing. And the stories they would tell me about the Christian faith over in China, it blew me away, changed my life, changed my life.
yeah,
And
that's
absolutely
bananas.
changed my life.
Yeah, so to just bring it back for a second on the movement, like I know they so Wayne, you said that you're dealing with, black uh, black Christians that are wanting to depart from the faith, correct?
Yeah, I've
Like
dealt
you're
with
having,
many. I've
yeah,
dealt with people close to me, family members, friends, people that I've walked with in the faith, people that poured into me, and they've fallen away
mm,
from the faith. Like
mm,
it, it's real. It's definitely real.
Yeah.
mm.
And it's based off of people.
Based, what do you mean?
Christians that are
Well,
wanting to depart from the faith.
this is how I see it when I came into conversation at first. I heard this, and this is what I always hear from people when I talk to atheists, and it's always the same thing. Is I ask them, I say, I mean, before I debate atheists too, but I like to talk to them. I want to see like where they came from, and I say, did you used to be a Christian? And they say yes, and obviously we know that's not truth, right? So on my theory or thought process is that people base people as a reflective of who God is. You know what I'm saying? So somebody was a jerk or mean to them in church back in the day, so they cut loose and they don't like church because people are mean, judgmental, da 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 da. And so we don't reflect. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't reflect who God is because of that person, but because of that person, they seem to think that that's who God is, and because of that, they start to look at people instead of who God is. And that's
Hmm.
why they kind of are like, I don't like church and all that stuff. I mean, besides the fact that they ain't regenerate, but besides the fact of that, but I see it all the time. Atheists are like, yeah, I used to be a Christian. And we all know that's not true. It's just somebody was a jerk. Someone was mean to him. Someone did something to him. Something swayed him away from, we all are the people that think we're better than everybody else. And that's common knowledge of what people think Christians are, is we all think that we're better, right? Nah, we're
I
worse.
know.
We're worse than you, you know?
Mm.
That's the whole point. And that's how I try to speak to people, is I'll be like, I ain't no better than you. I'm probably worse than you. That whole generation that sat there and said they're self-righteous and somehow think, because they're justified in Christ, they think that they're more righteous. You ain't no you're wearing Christ's righteousness on your back. You won't enter heaven with a shred of righteousness on you. You know what I'm saying? You better enter heaven with a gang of scars on you, and that's it. But that kind of thing is still happening, where people seem to think that they need to put on, I'm a Christian now, so I put on my Christian outfit and I go to church and I act like everything is all good, and I put up my family pictures on Facebook and we're all happy and da 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 da. You know,
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
it's not real. That ain't real. That's not real. You know what I'm saying? And I just feel like people give off the wrong vibe of what the true Christianity is, the true worldview, the true Christ, the true gospel, they all just bring it to some sort of people think we're better. And so when they meet people like us and we act real to them, they kind of they're like, I don't understand this. This is different than what I, had dealt with in the past or dealt with other people. So there's a lot of people ruining it, and just spitting on the Christianity world you name, and spitting on Christ and the gospel as it is, and just swaying people the wrong way in the first place. Sorry, I might have that train might have went off the rails. I do that.
No,
sometimes.
You're fine.
Go ahead.
So personally, I don't have anyone, like there's a couple of ladies that were a part of our church who left our church and are now going to a non-Trinitarian church. And so, like, they would still say, that they're Christian. Of course, I wouldn't affirm them as Christian. I warned them before, becoming members at this church that this was a oneness, Pentecostal modalism type of church. But outside of that, I don't have any real relationship, like day to day, week to week, family members, because no one in my family are professed Christians. And so, like, I don't really deal with this personally.
Yeah.
And so I was just curious with Wayne's story about how he's having to walk through this, because I know that I'm eventually going to have to, and I definitely want to do it in a pastoral, loving, shut up and listen first before I speak.
Well, what made them leave? It wasn't just the Trinity doctrine, right?
Oh yeah.
It wasn't just the Trinity doctrine.
No.
Was it?
Well, it was because they previously left the church because we didn't have a youth group. We didn't have things for their kids because, I mean, like we're a church plant. We're 2 years in.
There never was
almost 2 years.
We're 4 years in on our church plant, so I already know how that goes.
Yeah. And we don't plan on taking our kids out of the sanctuary. We want our kids in the sanctuary with us.
Right.
But because we couldn't babysit their kids, they went somewhere that had a big kid ministry, youth group, where the mother doesn't have to tell her kid to be quiet during church.
Yeah.
And but that's the reason for them leaving. But when I found out the church that they was going to, and I looked into it, because again, I'm from the trailer park, I'm nosy, right? The stereotype's real. I tried to call the pastor. The pastor wouldn't return my phone calls. All their doctrine says that they believe that God is one God with three personalities. That's modalism.
Yeah,
that's not Trinitarian speech.
That's the Spider-Man movie. No.
Yeah. And so I reached out to them and told them. I reached out to them and told them what their church believes and warned them not to go there, but they continue to go there and they're members there. And so we had to mark them down as someone who departed from the faith.
Can I jump in just for a second? This is what I believe is going on. I believe that this postmodern deconstructionism of the church, we have allowed heresies in all these other cults, and that's what they are, dude. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
We let them define what the church is. All right.
Yeah.
We've let them define what the church is. All right.
Yeah.
This is how the church ought to be. There's no spirit. You have no spirit in the church. A lot of people are going towards Unitarianism. Unitarianism. All right. A lot of people are, dude. It's crazy, man. A lot of people are going really towards like the Church of God doctrine. All right. They're going anti-Trinitarianism. They're going against the opposite direction of doctrine. And this was supposed to happen was it 2 Timothy where it says, was it, hold on, right here. Let me just, can I read it real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
It says, what is it in 4:3? For the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but have itching ears. They will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions, that will turn away from listening to the truth and wander off in the mist.
Signs and wonders, bro. You just said it the other day. They want signs and wonders as well. People want miracles. They want to see stuff.
You know what,
God
Dana?
exists. They want stuff. What?
I got a great Christmas present for you. You know what it is?
What?
It's Todd White. I'm gonna make him have your legs grow another 3 or 4 inches, and Bandu will be eye to eye, dude. We'll be eye to eye, sucker. Boom.
You're right, dude. You ain't right. Hey, man, Prince. Hey, salute.
He's my best friend, so I can say that. So
salute to Prince for being short. Hey, he wore platforms.
Hey guys, I gotta go.
I gotta go too. I gotta get back to my family. So I'm
out. You and Post Malone then.
All right, we'll close it out real quick, and
okay.
We'll see y'all.
God bless y'all. God bless.
All right, y'all.
God bless y'all.
Later, cool.
God bless.
Rice, I'll talk to you later, home slice.
See you, my friend. Hit me up.
Post Malone.
Well, man, it's been really good having you on here, brother.
Hey, the last one
we'll definitely talk,
bro. Hey, the last one you just did on the basement. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can hear you.
About burnout, and that was really, really good. That was really good. I just went through that, you know.
Yeah, man. So you know it well. You know it well.
It's real, dude. It's real, but God is good, huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, guys.
We'll definitely get up, man. We'll definitely get up, bro.
Love you guys.
All right, so let's wrap this in a bow in about 2 minutes, and me and you, let's just wrap it in a bow real quick, and we'll close out. It's been good having you on here, man. And if you want to tell people where they can watch your stuff and stuff like that, go ahead. But let's try to wrap it in a bow real quick. So in my opinion, again, as Christians, as leaders in the church, you know, again, this isn't something that I'm having to deal with. The two ladies I spoke about, you know, they won't let me have anything. Like I don't have any kind of say so in their life. You know, I can just say my piece, but even then, I wish that I could have done more, looking back. And so just to kind of wrap this in a bow, we need to, when dealing with Christian deconstructionism, even though we truly believe, you know, by our doctrine that there probably weren't Christians to begin with. They were members of a church. We need to be slow to speak and quick to listen, and just try to if they allow us to walk with them, to ask questions, to try to seek to be a servant to them. Jesus said that you will know my people by their love for one another. You won't know them by yarmulkes, by wearing turbans, by burqas, by suits, by no tattoos.
It's crazy that you went there. I was gonna go there with that verse.
by white skin, by black skin, by beards or no beards. Which, if you're a man, you should have a beard. But whatever.
Facts.
but the world will know us by our love for one another, and those of us who have been given grace should be most gracious. And this is where I felt a lot of times, you know, there's so many conversations I wish that I can rewind and get back and come at it from a different angle. But I'd love to hear what you have to say. Like, am I missing anything? Would you say?
No, I definitely think it was covered tonight. And some of that was going back to what you talked about in the first episode. You had a really good list that first episode. Are you able to pull that up real quick? That list of reasons on why people. I think it was a list of reasons why people would even head towards this Christian deconstructionism. You had a really good list that, and you know, I know the struggle of this, where you come to the table with, some good content and nobody really digs into it.
I was trying to, if you watched it, I was really trying to. Yes, I had a tragedy and a tragedy in their life. you know, which which and I had a list of what those tragedies could be. Them reading the Bible and seeing the problem of evil and not understanding the God of the Old Testament versus the God of the New Testament. And this is what I was talking about, like not properly being taught the gospel. You know, they understand that, you know, Christ died, was buried, and rose again, but they don't know the implications. They don't know why this stuff took place. And that's why the problem with evil is a question. And that's why the God of the Old Testament versus the God of the New Testament is in question. And then there's the problem passage. But it all comes down to some kind of a tragedy. Maybe it was um, um, they got into a debate with someone and they couldn't answer a question, or maybe a tragedy happened in their life. Maybe they were raped as a child or raped as a teenager, or knew someone that was. And if God is so loving, if God has my back, if if God's got a plan for my life, surely this isn't his plan. I must have uh, misunderstood God. Maybe there is no God. Like there's an impact that takes place that causes these other triggers to go off in their head. And basically, with what you were talking about tonight with the black church, that's what I see took place also. And this impact could be still what took place where the white folks white Christians wouldn't allow black Christians to worship with them. And that tower is still falling.
Yeah. You know, and I know this is a tangent, but if you want to look into that a little bit more, there's some really good sources out there on this right here, dealing with this issue right here of with the black church exodus and things. That I can give you more resources and all that. But here's a weird resource. This one I don't agree with theologically, but it does give you some history. That PBS special, there was a series that they did on the historic black church. Just look that one up on the PBS special.
Okay.
Again, where they were headed theologically with that series, I don't agree with, because obviously the guy who is the narrator or the host of the show, you could tell he's definitely not sound with his doctrine. I don't know where he stands theologically, but they were giving me some almost like reference points. They were giving me history, and then they started to give their own thoughts on it. And it was like, nah, just give me the history so I can actually look into this for myself. That's a really good place to start right there when you start to look at blacks and whites in the Christian church here in America historically. And when you look at the roots, it makes sense why so many are, as they start to dig these things up, as they start to, with archaeology, man, you find some really bad stuff that has happened in the past with archaeology. And sometimes we do that here with this information age that we live in. It's digital archaeology, and we find out some things that were hidden in those files that you got to go on the deep dark web to find. And when you start to find those things out, then you more hurt that it just piles on to what is already there. So yeah, a lot of times with the black church exodus, you see that happen right there, but just more hurt gets piled on, and to the point where they start letting go of the Christian backgrounds and traditions that they've been taught. As for the whites, again, I'm speaking very general here, but a lot of times you'll see pastors' kids that are deconstructing from the things that they were taught. You'll see people that were brought up in fundamentalist church or abusive churches. All of these, a lot of it has to do with hurt, trauma, misunderstanding. And when you deal with those issues, you either go one way or the other. Usually you go closer to Christ or you go further away from Christ. In our case, we deconstructed what we had going on in our life. God built it back up in sound theology. And that's not raising us up over anybody else, but just saying that's the route that we went.
Absolutely.
If it wasn't for his grace, we would have defected from the faith.
Look, man, when I first started going to church, no one would speak to me. Like I was just, I mean, like I clean up well now, but I'm
Right.
going there still flagging. You know what I'm saying? Like I grew up, like I went for many years. I went to an all black schools, and it was
Mm-hmm.
hard trying to be an individual person, and trying to establish who I am and what it is that I represent. When I was 14, I got robbed at gunpoint and beat up pretty bad. And the next day, I joined the gang, and but so at 20, at 21, I started reading the Bible, and then at 23, I started going to church. But I still look like I did when I was 16,
Mm.
right?
Right.
Wearing the same things, and I knew that if someone was to hurt me or come at me in the streets, I tell my homeboys, and we go hurt them and come at them. But and I get to the church, I feel like I'm hurting by myself.
Mm.
There was no one that was coming around me. But by just continuing to read the Bible and to say, you know what, it doesn't look like they're accepting me, but I'm not going to stop going. And I can remember being at this pretty large white church, and every few months I would just change my seat until I sat
Mm.
next to someone that I was able to get some camaraderie with, get to know. You see what I'm saying?
It's a good idea.
I wasn't going to let a bad experience, because I knew God was real, and I needed a place of fellowship. And and again, over time, God, He changed the way I looked. Whatever, shirts got tighter and pants got pulled up a little more. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, it is what it is. But deep down, like I'm still this guy that loves Jesus and that's trying to figure out who I am in this world. It was no different than when I was, establishing my identity in Christ. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, at the time when I was going to the all black schools, I was just trying to establish an identity. Like, who am I? And
Yeah.
like most all my friends were black. Like, it wasn't. I was grew up in a trailer park. And projects were next to us. We were both poor. It
Yeah.
wasn't, it wasn't nothing. And so it wasn't until I grew up and then being taught about racism that it was really a thing to me. But I don't know, man. I know that the church could have learned a lot from a 16-year-old me
Mm.
who, when it comes to, uh, I, I, I guess when it comes to an individuality, but not letting that individuality um, roll over on someone else. Because I was a white man, I had to be white, whatever that
Mm.
white, whatever that looks like. I'm not going to say that I'm not white. I'm not going to uh, disrespect my own heritage, but at the same time, I got to recognize where my white heritage screwed up.
Mm.
I got to look it in the face and say, yeah, man, we dropped the ball there. But personally, like, and so it's just I don't know, man, but I definitely want to look into what you're speaking about, and I definitely like to have you back on and talk about that more.
Yeah. 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 I guess if I'm gonna give my uh anytime though, yeah, yeah. As long as like, usually I'm free on the Thursday nights. Not always, but I can make some time. But if I'm gonna wrap up my thoughts on this, I think I'll just build upon what I already said, which is listening. Um, listening to where their heart is with this subject, asking them what do they mean when they say these things. um the thing about God is his omniscience. He already knows where we hurt. He knows what's on our mind. Even if we lie to ourselves, if we lie to other people, if we lie to him, he knows the truth.
Mm,
He
that's
knows
right.
exactly what we're going through, right? But we don't know where somebody is. We don't know where they hurt. That's why when you go to the doctor asks you questions so they can figure out what is the issue. They could try to pinpoint what is the problem. As pastors, as brothers in the faith, like we have to be able to pinpoint, or at least try to pinpoint, where a person is hurting, where they're misunderstanding the gospel. When you put a stethoscope to somebody's, when you put it to their heart, you can't talk while you're trying to listen to the heartbeat. You listen to it. You have to listen to it, and that's how it is in the as we're pastoring, as we're counseling people, we have to be able to hear somebody's heart.
Okay, so it's kind of like this idea that when you're counseling someone, when you're asking questions as a doctor would ask his patients, and you as a doctor need to listen as a doctor would listen to his patients.
Absolutely. That's
yeah. Questions are good, man. I don't see, and I think if I like with me personally, when I'm asking questions, I usually will. If I have something to say, I'll say something like, "Can I challenge you with something? Can I challenge you to think about something?" So I'm getting their permission before I even attempt to challenge them with a statement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a silence when you're listening to them. Again, it's a silence that is not passive. It's an active silence. So
Absolutely.
you're listening with your own human ability. You're also praying that God would grant you supernatural revelation, that he would give you a discernment that can only come from him, that he would use you in mighty ways. So it's an active silence. You're not just sitting there just listening, waiting for them to stop talking. You're understanding that this conversation is between you, them, and God.
Amen, brother. Again, man, I
Yeah,
really appreciate you. My mic just went up for some reason. I really
yeah,
appreciate you jumping on here with us tonight.
yeah, man.
Can you
This
still
has
hear
been
me?
great. Yeah, I can hear you. This has been
All
great,
right.
bro. This was a
Yeah,
great
man,
conversation.
and if you ever want to get back on here, man, let us know. You're welcome to join the party.
Yes, sir.
I do believe next week, because of Christmas, we're just going to talk about the incarnation,
Hmm.
and so it is what it is, man. If you feel like you want to jump in on anything, just reach out to me and let me know. If we're doing a subject and you got something to say about it, reach out to me and let me know.
Yeah. Is there any way? Well, we could talk off mic. I was gonna see if I can, if there was any way I can, if this is recorded or whatever, if there's a copy of it. But and I'll talk to you off mic. But you guys can, anybody that's listening at this point, I don't know who's listening now, or maybe they'll watch it later. But if you want to check out what I'm doing, you can check me out on YouTube. I post a lot of my stuff on there, even when I do guest appearances. Like, I'm hoping to post this on the YouTube page so that people can check you guys out. Like, I
Sweet.
try to, anything that I do, I try to, if I put it on the page, I'm doing it so that people can see, like, I have content, but there's other people out here doing it as well. So my YouTube page is called Saint Life Media. We're saints, so we got Saint Life Media. I'm on YouTube, on Facebook. You see my name there, Wayne Vince Cooley. Got the Basement Podcast that we do through, and me and my senior pastor. I help pastor at the church, so it's him and then me. We do a podcast called The Basement through Wrath and Grace. If you're ever in the Lancaster or the Pennsylvania area and you want to slide through, we've been planning a church in the Lancaster City area called Christ Alone Fellowship. ChristAloneFellowship.com. That's the website. But yeah, Christ Alone Fellowship Church. So anyway, that's enough plugs. You guys can check me out, and Lord willing, I'll be back.
Yeah, I'll definitely uh, look that YouTube channel up. Uh, so, so you'll be able to recognize me real good. So my YouTube channel is Trailer Park Theology with Jeff Rice. So it's just kind
Word.
of, so if you see that like on you, that's me, brother.
That's what's up.
I, I try I try to represent the hood. You know what I'm saying? My own
That's
personal
what's
hood.
up.
But anyways, I'll go ahead and close this out. So yeah, this is Grace Covenant Podcast, and like I said in the beginning, you know, this podcast is basically focused on two things, and that's theology and Christian growth in the local church. If you're not plugged into a biblical local church, you need to do that. This is God's means of grace for you to grow in holiness. You need to be a part of a church that's expositionally teaching the Bible, where there's fellowship, prayer, and the Lord's Supper is being distributed. Anyways, outside of that, we're going to be out. Hallelujah. Holla back.
God bless.